This is the world according to Jen and Carolyn.
Friend.
I'm trying to usher in October and Halloween.
I'm so excited.
I'm starting to feel it. The weather's warming up, which means in San Francisco, it's almost time for Halloween.
Yeah, San Francisco summer.
Totally. I put that picture on the socials of us going to Herbie Hancock on Sunday at the Stern Grove Festival. Yeah. And one of my family members from Pennsylvania was like, what the fuck? Is it winter there? I'm like, technically, yes. I'm like, our summer is coming next month. Don't you worry, girl.
Got our pumpkin spice on.
I know, right? But we're not there quite yet.
No.
And we're here to actually talk to you tonight about the Summer Olympics.
Woo!
Yep. They just wrapped up a couple of nights ago, which is when we actually tried to do this remotely. Actually, we've had a few false starts. We were babysitting on Saturday, my kid and our good friend's kid, and they just wanted to party.
Yeah.
And so
we were silly. We thought they'd go to bed, and then we usually just go record and it's no big thing.
Did not happen.
That didn't happen.
Yeah. And then we thought, let's try this remotely because we have Riverside and let's see how it works. But I think between our internets, the power of our shit internets combined equals a deficit in comedy.
Yes. And we are not willing to not have our witty repartee.
Yeah.
That I think we're known for.
We're not going to compromise the quality of our crass bullshit for you. We know you've come to expect a standard.
Yeah.
And we want to make sure that we hit that very low bar for you.
And then we get to see each other in person. And that was really the mission of this podcast was what can we do to spend time together?
We're not in different states. We're just in different parts of San Francisco. Not a big deal. We can make this work. So here we are in person in Carolyn's dining room. And we're going to talk to you about the Summer Olympics.
Yay.
Because whether you're a fan of the Summer Olympics, which I prefer, or winter sports, this is an incredible worldwide competition featuring the planet's greatest athletes. And I find it really captivating. Mm-hmm. Maybe not the breakdancing, but everything else is pretty damn captivating. You got breathtaking gymnastics routines to triple axels on the ice in the winter. The Olympics have been around for literally thousands of years. So we're going to talk about the history of the Olympics, also the challenges that Olympians face both in and outside of the spotlight, as well as some of the real and then the contrived controversies that we saw rear their ugly head just a few days ago. Mm-hmm. So here we go. Let's dive in, no pun intended, into the Olympics. So Carolyn, are you a winter or a summer Olympics person?
I love summer more. Mostly because I can do more of the summer Olympic things like running. And I used to be teach gymnastics. Never was a gymnast, but, so I find it just more exciting. I don't know how to ski.
Neither. We're not that kind of white.
No.
We're not Snow White people.
No, we're not. I didn't get to experience Tahoe till I was I didn't even see snow till I was like maybe 14 or 15.
I was 18.
Damn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, but I do love ice skating.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
Yeah, I love the Olympics. I love the opening ceremony. Mm-hmm. It makes me verklempt.
It is emotional. And this one I thought was particularly cool.
This one.
The Parisians, the French do it
one
right.
Ever.
Yeah.
Best one ever.
You had
in my opinion.
medal, which was amazing. Gojira. That was badass.
And weren't you telling me it was like the real place where
she was held prior to being
all these
decapitated?
Marie Antoinette
singing along with Gojira, holding their heads.
And it was
opera. Fucking amazing. So it was historical. And of course, Americans in their infinite stupidity screwed up the reference to the Feast of Dionysus, claiming that it was the friggin' Last Supper. Wrong shit. it, guys, and had issues with drag queens and like, I don't know, Big Blue Jesus or whatever. But that was really Dionysus.
That library scene that was like a little menage a trois.
Yeah, it was cute.
Brilliant.
Yeah, they did a really good job. Yeah. I enjoyed it immensely. Yeah. But we're woke, enlightened Americans. So,
what do you like best?
I'm a summer fan as well. Okay. The gymnastics are my thing. Mm-hmm. I love gymnastics. And after seeing the chick from Australia, the woman from Australia, I'm confident that I can enter breakdancing. Too bad they got rid of it. One of my friends on Facebook wrote, the Lord truly answers prayers, and then put a link to the article about how the Summer Olympics or how breakdancing is not coming back to the Summer Olympics in 4 years. It was a hot ass mess.
Was it that bad?
It was a hot fucking mess.
Oh,
but that Australian woman, I love her just because.
I thought the guys did good.
The guys we saw were good. And some of the women were good too, but it was the Australian woman for me. That really was the like.
If you and I could do it, it's pretty bad.
Yeah, and I can do that. I mean, shit, I get drunk and I do that.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. Can you make that happen?
We're gonna do it on TikTok.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, dude. Ideas. All right. But we're not here to talk about this. So we're going to give you a little history lesson because that's what we like to do here. So the first written evidence of the official games dates back to 1776. That's when the Greeks began measuring time in Olympiads, or durations between the Olympic Games. So they were held every 4 years initially as a tribute to the god Zeus, which is kind of cool. Mm-hmm. And in 393 AD, the Roman Emperor Theodosius banned the Olympic Games, claiming that they were encouraging paganism. So they weren't actually revived until the modern era.
I bet it's because they did it naked.
Probably.
He was no.
Who knows? And then it was AD. And so, it was after Christ. And I think, the big religions had taken hold by that point. And you're like, oh, this polytheistic shit, we're not going to have it. Whatever. Ew. So we brought it back, or it was brought back in 1894 by a dude named Baron Pierre de Coubertin. And he held it at the Grand Amphitheater at the Sorbonne University. And this was in June of 1894. Wow. So 2,000 people attended. There were a bunch of delegations, French. There were people from Belgium, Great Britain, Greece, Ireland, Italy, Russia, Spain, Sweden, and even the United States. So, that's how that went down. And Baron Pierre was very committed to the Olympic spirit that at least the current iteration of the IOC says they're committed to, promoting the development of the physical and mental qualities that form the foundation of sport, educating young people through sport in a spirit of mutual understanding and friendship with a view to build a better and more peaceful world. I love that. Sharing Olympic ideals with the world, trying to bring goodwill about, and bringing together athletes from all over the world to celebrate sport every 4 years.
I like that.
Me too.
They're keeping their mission goals strong because I feel that.
Yeah.
When I watch it without all the bullshit that, we're going to talk about. But the concept, and I think I never played sports when I was a kid. I wasn't very athletic.
Me neither. Surprise. I tried to be in cheerleading when I was in sixth grade. It went terribly wrong.
Yeah, I did. I was dance captain. But that's different. That's all theatrical.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think that that's why people have their kids do sports. It's a great way to learn these things. And that's beautiful.
Yeah, definitely. I believe, and I have my kid in sports for those very reasons. So, then you saw the 1900 games, which were in Paris as well. And that's when you saw the first female Olympic champion, Charlotte Cooper, who was a British tennis player who won Wimbledon 5 times. But there were only 22 women out of almost 1,000 athletes. All right. So things didn't get better for a very long time. Now we're at sex parity. I don't like to say gender parity. It was 50-50 in these last games. And then and compare this to the last time the games were held in Paris, which was 1924. In 1924, if I'm remembering correctly, I think there were like 165 women and close to 3,000 men. It's crazy. And here we are 100 years later and we've achieved parity.
Progress.
Slow progress.
But progress nevertheless.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
All right. Then we'll take you to 1936, where the Winter and Summer Olympics were held in Germany. Unfortunately, it just became a big old propaganda fest for the Nazis. Boo! But it was the first time the Olympic flame was introduced. Yay!
and the first African American who beat beat Germany for running with Jesse Owens.
Yes, Jesse Owens. Yep, absolutely.
So,
amazing
he showed
runner.
them.
Yeah, he did. Absolutely. America. Fuck yeah. We clearly had our problems, but not to the level of Nazi Germany. Not quite.
No.
And then 1960, we saw the 9th Stoke Mandeville Games. They were held in the same city as the Olympics. And that event was actually considered to be the first Paralympics. And now the Paralympics are held just a few weeks after the General Olympics. So those are coming up anytime. And I'm excited about that. I love the Special Olympics.
Yes.
Awesome stuff.
Really big ties to the Kennedys.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I forget who it was, but it was one of the Shrivers who was married into the, like, Maria Shriver's family is connected to the Kennedys. But yeah, that was, I believe, she started all of that and really made it. And JFK really made that an incentive.
Well, that makes total sense. That's very cool. I saw a post, and actually, I'm not a big fan of Arnold as a politician because he was the governor of California, and we're not big fans of Republicans. He's a common sense Republican though. But he was taking a picture with these Special Olympians. It was the cutest thing ever. Some asshole wrote something terrible, and I thought his response was beautiful. He's like, basically, you can grow from this experience, and you can realize that these kids or these folks have incredible courage and tenacity and possess this tremendous strength that you never will, or you can continue to be an asshole for the rest of your life and never grow and never learn. But he said it more eloquently, and I was like, good for you, Arnold.
Yeah.
We don't disagree on everything, buddy. Then we had the first summer version of the Youth Olympics took place in 2010, and the first winter version of this was 2012. So again, today, Olympism, we are 50-50 when it comes to men and women. Very exciting.
Is there an age limit for the Olympic Games?
I don't know.
I didn't know there was a youth Olympics. Because I was actually kind of surprised. I thought you had to be 18. But that wouldn't make sense because a lot of them are younger. But I was sort of surprised when there's really young kids.
Yeah.
In my mind,
I don't know what the cutoff is and where one ends and the other begins.
You're talking,
yeah. So the Olympics are really defined by this pervasive sense of universality, and continuous development worldwide, presence on every habitable continent and even no continents, because we have the refugee team as well, which is super exciting. I think that came about in 2016 for those folks who were stateless by no fault of their own. There are 206 NOCs, I think those are nations, in the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, compared to 193 member states of the UN, for example. So,
oh, really?
Yeah.
That's cool.
So they're recognizing places and people in a way that even exceeds the UN, which is super inclusive.
And just from an organizational development standpoint,
oh my God,
what a fascinating place it must be to work.
The Olympic Village or the IOC.
But yeah, just the way that most of my Olympic knowledge comes from Cool Runnings.
Oh,
so, one of my favorite Olympic movies.
Do you know I worked with a bobsledder? She was an Olympic bobsledder.
No way.
Yeah. So she initially started as a runner for Cal. And then I don't know what happened, but they were like Olympic recruitment folks on campus. And they're like, hey, have you ever considered bobsledding? She's like, why not? I guess sometimes when you're athletic, and it just transfers to other sports.
That's the plot of Cool Running.
Yeah, exactly. And she was a American, though, Black African-American woman from the Bayview who was doing bobsledding in the Olympics.
Amazing.
Fucking cool
She's
shit.
like, this is my chance.
That's one of the reasons that I brought her onto the team, because we were doing workforce development. I was like, what a cool story for young people to hear, because we were working with all young people.
Did she medal?
I don't think so, but I can't remember. Maybe.
We should talk to her.
I'll reach out. We'll interview her. Sherelle,
cool.
If you're out there, you're awesome. So yeah, but we also know, you and I know, and I think other people probably know as well, especially when you have fucking Flava Flav financially sponsoring the fucking women's water polo team, because he found out that, oh, by the way, a lot of them have to work 2 and 3 jobs just to get there.
Sounds like me.
Yeah, exactly. We had people who really want to do great things have to struggle.
Yeah.
So, with Olympic bronze, gold, and silver comes great rewards, right? Oftentimes, not always. In fact, seldomly, just for the big wigs. You get endorsement deals, speaking engagements, book deals. But it's not like that for most of these folks.
Most of them have to do a lot of fundraising.
Yes.
And community-based and Yeah.
You can tell, like, particularly with gymnastics, like, I grew up working class. I can tell these parents are also working class. When they pan to the parents, I'm like, these are everyday folks who probably had to work really hard to ensure that their kid, in this case, it was the parents of the women who ended up medaling, which was amazing. But they put in blood, sweat, tears, and tons of money into believing in their children.
Yeah.
Oh, I get verklempt thinking about it. That's when I would tear up.
Yes.
Looking at the parents.
Yes.
And Snoop. Snoop was like wearing their shirts and just like dancing. Yeah. He was just having the best time.
I love him.
I'm assuming you can get spliffs out there. So I'm sure he doesn't travel without it. He's Snoop Dogg. So let's start with these financial challenges, shall we? So there was a Morningstar article I found that had a lot of good information in it. Now, Carolyn, can you guess who the highest paid athlete playing in the Paris Olympics was?
I'll take rich white men for $1,000, Jen.
You got it. It's a famous golfer named John Rahm, who I know very well, not personally, but because my husband golfs, I'm privy to all this golf bullshit. So the other top paid athletes, they're all men, by the way, are basketball players, other golfers, and tennis players. They comprise the top 20. Okay. People like Steph Curry and LeBron James, all these names that you recognize, right? They're compensated very, very well for the sports that they play. We have a long way to go as women. We'll get there. So, in this, back to this article, there was a U.S. discus thrower, Veronica Fraley, who was interviewed or was shared on X, and they put it in the article, that despite being an Olympian who qualified for the game in Paris, she doesn't have enough money to pay her rent. She said her school, Vanderbilt, only sent about 75% of my rent while they pay football players who haven't won anything enough to buy new cars and houses. I love how she straight up threw her school under the bus.
Yeah.
You need to bring attention to this.
Yes.
She's competing in a game, in a month-long competition, depending on how far she gets, that the world is watching.
I don't understand how, from a marketing, never mind. Can't go up against football.
No, you can't.
You would think just having Olympiad, isn't that good? That's amazing.
I know you think her school would want to pay, but anyway, I think this just goes more to,
yes,
the conversation we're going to have later in this episode about how women, particularly Black African-American women, are treated. So, according to one report, 26.5% of current U.S. Olympic athletes earn less than $15,000 a year. That's crazy. Medal winners can earn cash prizes up to $37,500 through a program run by the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee called Operation Gold. Not much money. So this is from a CNN article. Only 50% of American track and field athletes who are ranked in the top 10 in the nation in their event earn more than $15,000 a year income from the sport. In a statement to Market Watch, Flavor Flav said, I'm just happy to help those in need who are representing the best of all of us. This is exactly why I've been in Paris and trying to bring awareness of the hardships of some of the Olympians. This was so funny. I don't know if I put this quote in here, but I read a quote from a woman who's on that team. And she's like, dude, I don't know what's going on. I don't know how Flava Flav is basically an honorary member of this team, but he's amazing. He's helping us, and I am fucking here for it.
Dude. He's a happy dude.
Him and Snoop were like the Olympic heroes.
Good for them.
I love
more
them.
of that.
Yes. Yeah. And then, there's also the mental health side, Carolyn, which you're going to speak to for us. Since most Olympians don't win a medal, many don't even qualify for finals, returning home can really suck. It's got to be hard. And a lot of athletes fall into a deep depression after the Olympics, says this person who actually is what is she? I think she works for the Olympics. I think she's a therapist for the Olympics. Anyway, I didn't write that shit down. But it was really, I think, Simone Biles and Naomi Osaka from the Tokyo Olympics who were really open about their mental health struggles and brought it to the forefront and said, you know what? I'm not going to do this, whether it be interviews with the press, whether it be competing itself. This isn't good for me right now. I'm not in a good place. I'm worried I'm going to get physically or psychologically injured here.
Good for her. And you could see when I just watched the documentary, it's noticeable on her face.
Yeah.
She looks completely frightened.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're dizzy, if you're like, I'm getting dizzy, and people are, we're going to talk more about this. I keep alluding to it, but I think particularly with Black athletes, and white spectators, whether it be inherent, whether it be, like suppressed bias, unconscious bias. That's the word I'm looking for. Jesus, it's been a long day. Spent the day with my child, y'all. School starts on Thursday. Whether it be unconscious bias or whether it be overt racism, there is this sentiment that this Black athlete needs to perform for me regardless.
Yeah. How dare you not perform and entertain me?
Right. I care about you for one reason and one reason only, and that's to watch you do something amazing. Entertain me. It's really sick when you really start to drill down and look at a lot of the peer-reviewed articles on this phenomenon, because it's very real. It's not just Jen and Carolyn, who are so woke you'll never sleep again. This is a thing. So, fortunately, both the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic committees seem to be taking mental health very seriously. They formed a task force ahead of the 2020 Tokyo Olympics. And, when they talked about Amin Khalif, I think that's how you say her name, she was saying when they were asking her, we'll get into what happened with her, how are you doing? And she's like, well, our therapists don't even let us look at social media. And I'm like, thank God.
Yeah.
So Carolyn, can you talk to us more about the mental health challenges that athletes face and how financial and physical challenges create or exacerbate existing mental health issues?
Absolutely. I mean, stress. That's I can sum it all up in one word is really what mental health is about. But how awful to be, so good at what you do and spend so much time really perfecting and conditioning and training to then have stress about, how am I going to survive? And, and these trainings probably are really expensive.
Yes.
These coaches are really expensive. The outfits, the injuries, I mean, it stacks up and they usually can't hold a job.
Yeah.
So it's not, and sometimes maybe not even going to school. So, that can't be good for anyone. I'm just going to say that right off.
Did you see I, Tonya?
Yeah. That would be a borderline mother that made her life miserable.
But they were also really low income, and Tonya was made fun of for her outfits and the way that she looked.
Yeah.
Sad.
Rich girls suck.
Yeah, they really do.
Unkind. Let me rephrase that. Unkind people suck.
Yes,
but
there could be very nice people with money.
I could see that where it should be about your talent, but usually what it ends up being about is follow the money, right? And who has the best. And so it's very unfair, and it sets, it's not equitable. It's not, it's not a level playing field. Let's just say that. And that's unfortunate because your ability, some of these things are ingrained, right? Yeah. But, there's a lot of different influences that make this, like all our discussions, really complex. And I actually feel personally, I don't know if you agree, but this is an area where we're seeing a lot of upward progress, at least in our lifetime. So I do have a lot more hope that this trajectory is going to continue. And I just really hope we don't go backwards. But again, when you look at mental health in sports, there's sort of two different fields that emerged, and I think now are combining in a way that makes really sense. So something called sport psychology, and then we have mental health in sports. So I think those were seen as two really separate things, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But the mental health aspect of sport, in my mind, it's all the same, right? It can be applied to any specific task, career goal, but sports psychology that came out in the late 1800s and evolved in the 19th century. These two things kind of work together. But and again, I'll name too that the more time has gone on and we have more research and, we're able to look at athletes, they're so regimented and they have such a routine and it's so predictable. That's a really exciting thing to study. But all of this, no matter what we're talking about, sports psychology in its core really was looking at more of a preventative actually in its beginning, it was sort of more of an afterthought of how can we help athletes focus more using mindfulness, using tools that we know trace back to sort of more spiritual practices of indigenous cultures like Buddhism and Hinduism and, just more sacred spiritual practices, really focusing how can I get my mind focused on concentrating. You know, and again, just because sport is such a microcosm of our society and athletes like celebrities, you know, they have this incredible platform and I think a responsibility to put mental health in the forefront.
Yeah.
And, you know, again, it's unfortunate that we have to call them brave for doing something, you know, again, like Simone Biles, where really she's a survivor of abuse.
Yeah.
And, you know, God bless her for standing up and saying no, you know, and again, so, when I was studying at SF State, my bachelor's was in kinesiology, exercise science, and fitness. And one of the classes we got to take was sports psychology. And it really resonated on, again, I mentioned the thoughts and the cognitive behavior and the mindfulness and the focus and positive reinforcement and motivation was sort of everything that was being studied within that. But it was very much focused on athletes. And I think now we see that more in mental health, that it's not just about, oh no, you're depressed. Well, take this pill or do this. We're really focusing on different things. And again, the recognition of the importance of mental health in performance so that when you are struggling with something like finances or employment or I don't know, just, you know, your rent, you know, all the things that it takes to be a functional human. It's so important to have access to these things and have more recognition. And I think it's wonderful that athletes are now being seen as we need to help these people. They're very vulnerable to that.
Human beings?
Well, yes.
Whoa,
yeah. Humans first, athletes second. Well, and that's the difference, you know, that really what you're talking about is we're even told at work, well, no, you have to show up and bring your A game.
Yeah.
Well, that's not realistic.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not AI. I'm not a computer.
I'm glad that that's changing, at least in a lot of spaces. Like I know that I work in a family first, you know, take care of your mind and your body first environment. And I know not everybody is fortunate enough to have that philosophy be the dominant one in their office.
That has to change though, because it's so counterintuitive.
Yeah.
Every research study I've been looking at and that talks about stress management and about our nervous system, your productivity actually goes up when you have a lower stress.
Yeah.
So just knowing that you can have a mental health day and use that for whatever you want and not, I lie. Sorry, work. I have to sometimes say I don't feel well. My favorite thing is explosive diarrhea. You can't argue with that.
Nope, you can't. Food
no one's
poisoning.
asking me to come into work now.
Nope.
But that sucks that I can't just say, and it's also, it's private.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have to say if I have those hours. So anyway, we're going off on a tangent, but these are important things. And absolutely athletes more than anyone needs this because of certain themes that come up for them. So, I've even seen some articles that are talking more about this being integrated into the field of coaching and sport management.
Great.
You have to take psychology courses.
I love that.
You have to understand all of this as a component. But I want to take a moment to talk about some themes that do come up when I think about Olympians, because we talked about they start really young. It's not like you can wake up one morning, although for your friend Sheree, it worked out with the bobsled, but she had some training and the running.
She'd been an athlete all her life.
But, you know, you can't wake up anymore and at 18 go, I think I want to play soccer.
Right.
If you haven't started at 5, God, there's like some soccer taught shit going on where it's like they're trying to teach kids who can't even.
Look at Tiger Woods. He was on like TV shows showing off his golf prowess at like age 3.
Well, and that talk about his dad.
Yes.
Specialization is trending a lot younger. Parents want their kids to, I think from a good place, try a lot of things. And sports is a really good way to make friends, learn about teamwork, great for their development, for their body, for their motor skills, for their, you know, again, all these things, speech development, all these things that we want our kids to have. However, it's younger and younger because they're more able, the trend is going that way that, you know, what used to be maybe college now is high school. And even some studies, a 2014 Amplify Sport Psychology article written by Jimmy Woo commented that now it's as young as 5th and 6th grade. So we're talking 10 and 11-year-olds. And I will get on my soapbox and say, that's not good for their bodies. When you're that specialized, that young, that's when I left dance because the time commitment, at SF Ballet would have been, 4 or 5 hours after school. And my mom's like, well, I have another child. Like I don't have childcare for her.
Yeah.
I can't do that. And you're not going to be a famous ballerina. So that sucks. But it also wasn't good for my body, AKA the tissue eating.
Right.
So anyway, but we also want children to, feel that confidence. But I think there's still, as much as there's progress, there's still a really big myth and a stigma that we talked about around mental health, and this myth that athletes are supposed to be these pillars of health and perfection. Yeah. And guess what? That then leads you into a lot of mental health problems because you also start to feel that. And it's and not just the competition of it, but we're looking at, anxiety, just transitioning out of different spaces and perfectionism and eating disorders and body dysphoria, all the things. So, it's really important that not just elite athletes and youth athletes and, Olympians and your kid who's playing soccer. Yeah. It's a great opportunity, but it has to be really well-rounded. Yeah. And I think we always have to ask, like, what's the purpose of this? Is it serving my child or is it serving my parental dream of perfection? And I, unfortunately, for all the amazing parents we see who really are coming from a good place and their kid wants this, it's not good.
It's a lot. Yeah. And nobody is impervious to stress. I'm listening to this great Wondery podcast called Hysterical right now. And I'm not going to go into details, but they're trying to determine, and the jury's still out because I'm only halfway through it because I won't pay for a subscription. Sorry, Wondery. Is something that's happening to this group of people. Is it physiological or is it psychological? And they are talking to somebody who was at like top at the CIA, who was afflicted with something. They were talking about Havana syndrome. I'm not going to get into it, but there are experts saying this is all psychological.
There's no, it's sad that we haven't studied the placebo effect more.
Yes.
Because there's no difference.
And and also, what this sociologist said, who thinks that it's mass psychogenic illness, AKA hysteria, that's impacting both this group of young women on the East Coast and the CIA agents, is you are not impervious to stress. Because here you have the CIA guy going, dude, I've been in Afghanistan. Like, I've watched people die, whatever. I am trained for stress. And it's like, you really think that after you have seen all this shit, that you might not be susceptible to having a breakdown that manifests as physiological symptoms? Yeah. You are not impervious. Nobody is. No. Not top athletes, not top CIA agents. Yeah. Nobody.
And it doesn't make you vulnerable and weak. It makes you human.
Yeah. So let's move on to the racism and the sexism and the transphobia that unfortunately is still very much a part of at least the Olympic viewership and social media commentary experience, and also the professional commentators. I'm going to get into that. We're getting better, but we still haven't made it. So according to the CBC article I read, the International Olympic Committee says Paris is the first games, like I said, to reach full gender or sex parity. Awesome. Yet some male commentators are still under fire for the comments they made about female athletes during the competition. In one case, a Eurosport commentator was suspended for suggesting female swimmers were off fixing their makeup. In another, a commentator was condemned for using stereotypical cliches about housewives to describe a tennis player. Awesome. Male athletes are celebrated and described in adjectives that really discuss the strength of their athleticism, the director of the Future of Sport Lab said. There's always a shift, unfortunately still, where female athletes are analyzed for the intrinsic, aesthetic, and really outside of the realm of sports perspectives. So there was a 2016, language or why can't I think? Language isn't working for me tonight. It was a study from Cambridge that found that women in sports, the focus is disproportionately on the appearance, clothes, and personal lives of these women, highlighting a greater emphasis on aesthetics over athletics. And let's talk.
You see that in Hollywood too.
Oh, totally.
Yeah,
totally.
I think it's and you see that in politics.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yes, we do.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on in San Francisco right now in terms of the way that women are treated or allegedly treated by men in the political field, and we're saying enough is enough. And I've seen some stuff, and I've experienced some stuff working where I work and doing what I do. Not in my office. My office is great, but around the periphery, right?
There's always going to be those people who suck.
Yeah, there is. It really, it's awful. But anyway, there's also the intersection of racism and sexism. And, when it comes to Simone Biles and Sha'Carri Richardson, the Olympics has really failed Black women. There was an ACLU article that I read that said, from Sha'Carri Richardson's pre-Olympic suspension for smoking legal marijuana to the International Swimming Federation's ban on swim caps designed for natural Black hair, Black women are the common denominator in many of these stories. So another ACLU article is called "The International Olympic Committee is Failing Black Women."
That's a great title.
Yeah. And
pretty to the point.
I thought this was great and really made a lot of sense insofar, especially as, when it came to the way the Algerian boxer Khalif was treated. So this article said the very differences that are overlooked and even celebrated for other athletes are weaponized against Black women. Take Michael Phelps' unique genetic blessings, including unusually long arms, double jointed ankles, and a body that produces half the lactic acid of the average athlete. Phelps has been praised as a marvel for these genetic mutations, which enhance his ability to excel in the sport. Meanwhile, athletes like Christine Maboma and Beatrice Masalingi, whose bodies naturally produce a higher level of estrogen than the average women. Do
you mean testosterone?
Testosterone, sorry, are shamed and ultimately disqualified from competing at all. So
it's okay for Phelps because he's a man.
Right.
But not for a woman.
Well, yeah. And then there's all this transphobia that comes into play, right? Like with Khalif, who is a cis biological woman. And there was a fan who was interviewed, an Algerian dude, in regard to this controversy that should have never been a controversy. And he said, it's because she's African, because she's Algerian. He said, these comments are coming from white people. It's a kind of racism. I truly believe that. So I'm sure if you were watching, you know that Khalif, she won her bout against an Italian fighter. The Italian fighter dropped to her knees and said, this is unjust. She got punched in the face.
Ow.
Hard punch to the face. She was not saying this is unjust because she was implying that Khalif is a man. She was just saying this is unjust.
I got punched in the
face. She got knocked the fuck out. And she later came out and said, no, those were not my intentions. Do not do this. Do not use my words against me. So it was Khalif and then a Taiwanese boxer, Lin Yu Ting, who were both, there's a lot of debate around gender regulations and the perception of sports that centered around these folks. There was a body, I have it in my notes somewhere. I think it's called the IBA, that was comprised primarily of Russians. And in 2020, they said, nope, Khalif and I believe at that point, Lin Yu Ting could not compete. And they wouldn't say why. They just said they failed a gender test and they won't really give us details or anybody details on why. And so, these gender tests, they're often targeted at female athletes of color who don't conform to typically Western white ideals of femininity. When I was doing research on this, I didn't even know this. There were people claiming that Serena Williams was a man.
Oh, God.
Isn't that fucked up?
I have no comment. That's
it's
disgusting.
You've never seen a buffed woman who could beat your ass at tennis and probably just beat your ass in general because she's a natural born athlete.
Or you've never seen a very effeminate man.
Yeah.
Who's dainty and just how he is.
Right.
That's just how bodies kind of work.
Yeah. Right. And so the IBA, that body that I mentioned, the IOC refuses to work with them anymore. They're banned because they've done a bunch of shady shit. So, we don't know if there's anything particularly going on with Khalif in regard to differences in sex development. But just know, guys, that there is something called DSD, differences in sex development. It's used to refer to a wide range of different scenarios, which the National Health Institute describes as a group of rare conditions involving genes, hormones, and reproductive organs, including genitalia. It means that a person's sex development is just different than most people's. And so individuals can have either sex chromosomes generally linked to being female, XX, or usually associated with being a man, XY, yet have reproductive organs and genitals that may look different. Now, you want to know how common this is, DSD? According to the NIH, the incidence of a child with a disorder of DSD is approximately 1 in 1,000 to 4,500 live births. fairly common.
That's really common.
Pretty common. So, Carolyn, can you talk to us a bit about the psychology behind these double standards and dependence on this constrained and pretty Eurocentric view of womanhood?
Well, and it's so patriarchal. Like, it works for white men to define women, and then women of color, and then you could even, continue to go down, that trail. But it's just reeks of gender privilege.
Yeah.
Anyway, is that a thing?
Gender privilege? I mean, sex privilege? Yeah, for sure.
Well, again, so just because I want to believe that some people just don't know, but you get a fucking book. There's the internet. You can learn this stuff, but just in case, it's something that I think a lot of people think they understand, but most people don't. And there's so much science and there's so much stuff that we know now. And there's so much and can be more representation. But what makes up your human body is not just identity and identity, which is how you think of yourself, and attraction, which is what your, hormones and, what makes you attracted to someone from your heart.
What turns you on?
Yeah. What turns you on?
Yeah.
Thank you. How you express that from an outward perspective.
Right.
And then you have your sex.
Yeah.
Which can be a lot of different things.
That's why I don't like conflating, or I don't like using the terms gender and sex interchangeably, because gender is how you express. And that is up to you, how you intrinsically feel. It doesn't necessarily coincide with your genitalia.
Right. And your biological sex.
Right.
Or your gender expression.
Correct.
Or identity and what you're attracted to. And also I will say what you're romantically attracted to.
Yeah.
I can have sex with a lot of different kinds of people, but I may not be romantically attracted to them. So enough about me. But just so people know, both sexes have, the human body has estrogen and testosterone. Testosterone isn't male. Estrogen isn't female.
Yeah.
There's variations. There's a higher percentage of estrogen in most women, but that can ebb and flow. And that also changes throughout our lifespan.
Yeah.
And so I really like the work of Luann Brezentine. Came out of USF. Yay, San Francisco. UCSF.
We're not that. Our alma mater did not produce anybody from a brain clinic. Let me tell you. No offense, USF.
We got out. We came from there.
We're more about the touchy feely stuff as opposed to the hard sciences.
Well, I love her. She wrote 2 books. I hope she revises them. I don't know if she's working on that. There's the male brain and the female brain, and she really focuses on the neuroscience and the hormones. And then she really looks at it very heterocentric, though. Partnerships. But like I said, men have estrogen, and like I said, females have a higher level of estrogen than males. But I'm just going to name this. Testosterone can actually convert to estrogen in men as they age, specifically if they have more body fat. So just word to the wise guys out there. But so I'm not a gender or sex specialist at all. That's very specific, and we have to learn more, but give me some grace here, but sexual orientation, gender identity is a beautiful variation. And that's unique and individual. And, it's so gross that our society wants such a homogeneous look at this, because that does nothing for us. And I hope we are moving in a more fluid direction.
Well, it does something for for white men and,
it's
people
politics.
who want to maintain the status quo of, women belong in the kitchen barefoot and pregnant.
Yep.
And they're biological women and,
And, going to name this as well, that it's so important that we hold this space for people to express themselves unapologetically. And I'm not even saying we have to hold it. You should just be able to go ahead and express yourself unapologetically. Yeah. But I can say that because no one's going to kill me.
Right.
No one's going to beat my ass.
Right.
For how I go out in the street.
Yeah.
And that's a reality that many of personal friends of you and I have.
Right.
That they have to live with. So that's why this is, to me, this is a top priority of
life or death,
politics right now, and in our world. And in the Olympics, we're seeing just how poorly that can be handled at times. Great article from Hilltop 2019, Jewel College by Madison Carroll Porth, who notes what I think we already know, that sexual inequality still exists in sports and has permeated the culture in such a way that female athletes basically they can't win. And she talks about 4 things: the double standard, the wage gap, marketability, and then the villain versus the rogue. That there's this double standard, that there's a very binary setup in how athletes are interviewed. We already talked about that. The hashtag cover the athlete that came out in 2015, a movement popularizing the difference in how male versus female athletes were covered in interviews in the news. And again, that's very binary. We're not even looking at the other sides of that and all the different spectrums. The wage gap, which goes in hand with marketability. There's still this excuse that, well, no, we're not going to pay the women's soccer team as much. They don't have as much viewership. Or no, we're not going to pay the WNBA females more money. They don't have as much viewership as the NBA. Well, that's actually changing.
It is changing.
That viewership and that marketability is actually getting smaller. And so you can't say that anymore.
It's getting bigger. You mean viewership and marketability is getting
So what used to be, this came from a Bill Simmons podcast. I linked it. It's called The History of Everything. He did a section on women in sports, and he talked about, I'm going to mess up the number, but it was something like, it used to be a 66% gap. Now it's like 33.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and we got to be a part of this too. Like Bill Burr is one of my favorite comedians, and he's like, and I love him because he walks the line and he's cheeky and shit, but I like what he has to say. And he's like, all right, women, you want to complain about how women aren't paid equitably in sports? Why don't you watch more women's sports? And I was like, you know what? He's right.
Yeah. You say you're a feminist, but name one female basketball player.
So I think we have to do that. And from what I understand, there's this sports bar franchise called the Sports Bra that started in Oregon. And I think there's one coming here. So you and I are going to be regulars, and we got to get into some shit like women's basketball.
I'm down.
Yeah.
I love basketball.
We got to support it.
Is exciting to me.
Let's make that gap even smaller.
I love it.
We're doing that.
Well, yeah. So, it's just, and there's so much more room, the villain versus the rogue. There's so much more variation in men's sports for, there's no female equivalent of the lovable bad boy.
Yeah.
It's like if a woman did half the stuff that a man did, it would be very differently covered in the news. And they, again, so it's a different kind of conversation. But, I also think that this goes just beyond the athletes themselves, that the more we're seeing more fluidity and more variation in people in the newsroom, people in media, people reffing, coaching, writing copy, doing the marketing, doing the ad campaigns. We're going to see, I think we're watching humans do some pretty freaking fantastic things in this day and age. And it's really awe-inspiring. And I just hope we're at a turning point. It doesn't take another 100 years. I hope in our lifetime, we'll see that.
We're seeing cool shit already. We're seeing the Giants. I think they still have her, a female base coach. I can't remember what base she's coaching, and then I watch a lot of basketball, and there's so many female commentators now, both on the court and in the newsroom. And you watch ESPN, and you're seeing more and more women. It's exciting. It's an exciting time in sports. So, and I am hoping in our lifetime that we reach parity, because we are making progress.
I think so.
We are. And I found this great Olympics.com article. Take it with a grain of salt because it's the Olympics promoting themselves. But, they're talking about, again, breaking new ground in terms of 50% men, 50% women in this last Olympics. And then I found this Fast Company article that said, talk more about the Paris Games being a 50-50 split. We already talked about that. And the Olympic movement that the IOC has been chasing for years, or landmark. They've been after this for a really long time, and they were close in Tokyo, and now they got there. So, if you look at people who have been playing sports, women who have been playing sports for a really long time, I don't think there's a single one of them who would say that they have not seen progress and change. And this article that I'm referring to, the Fast Company one, interviewed Billie Jean King. She's a famous tennis player. And she said, I think about the women and the people who cared about us, women's sports, back in the old days, and they're not alive today. And I wish they were, because of all the work they did and it couldn't get any place so much of the time. Well, it did. Know that those people laid the foundation, did the groundwork to get us where we are today, and we are getting better. And like I said, here's that stat. 100 years ago in Paris, at those games, there was only 135 women and 2,954 men.
Wow.
King took notice of that and said the IOC is showing the world it's doing things the right way now, at least insofar as that goes, right? So, the IOC is really trying to focus these collective efforts of theirs on these two key commitments. And one is to consolidate the Olympic Games as one of the most effective global platforms for promoting gender equality, inclusion, and diversity. And the second is to lead by example and support the acceleration of women's meaningful representation in governance, leadership, and decision-making bodies in the Olympic movement.
Yay!
We're getting there, dude.
Sports.
We're getting there. Use the power of sports to change things. And, there are a lot of people out there who say disparaging things about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And what they don't realize is that it benefits all of us.
Yeah.
It does not just benefit historically marginalized people, minorities. It benefits everyone. So often you hear people like recovering racists, I call them, who talk about a turning point where they started to change their racist perspectives, like long held views that they grew up with.
Yeah.
Generational racism. And it typically starts with knowing someone of the race that they had negative associations tied to. And they're like, wait a minute, if this person's cool, maybe other fill in the blank, black, brown, whatever people are cool too.
Yes.
It's knowing people.
Yes.
And when you are sometimes forced to be in proximity, working every day side by side with somebody who doesn't look like you, maybe somebody you have some bias against.
Yeah.
You might change your mind. You're likely to change your mind. Science says
yes,
you're likely to change your mind, provided it's a positive interaction. And that largely depends on you and your behavior. So it's cool. So our final thought here, and then in terms of visibility and diversity, equity, and inclusion, you talked about or alluded to trans folks and our trans friends and how the more we try to change things, the more we say to the Trump campaign, for instance, and all those fucking whack jobs that are supporting him, no, these statewide bills that you're trying to impose on people just for being who they are, that punish them and punish their allies, we're not going to stand for it. So anyway, I'm going off on a tangent here, but we're going to give you our final thought. The Olympics really are this beautiful celebration of athletic excellence. They feature the best and the brightest from around the world. And the IOC even created a refugee team, like we said, of Olympians who have been displaced from their homeland. We've finally reached gender parity or sex parity, excuse me. We have Rebecca Andrade, Simone Biles, Jordan Chiles. I don't know if I said her name right. Just made, but her and her family are super cute. They just made Olympic history with the first trio of Black women that stood on the podium together for their floor exercises. And they're the first ones to share those top 3 spots in the Olympics. And then I saw it happen again in running, I believe. With women, women runners, all Black women runners. And I was like, cool.
Little girls, little boys, everywhere. It doesn't just benefit women, it benefits everyone.
Representation matters. We say that all the time. That is the hill we'll die on.
It's a lifesaver.
Yeah. And on the national stage, man, we Americans have our first real prospect of electing a Black and Indian woman from Oakland blood.
Oh, yeah.
Progress is happening all around us and it feels good. At least to people like you and me, Carolyn.
Yes.
We have a lot of work to do, but things are feeling a lot more hopeful.
Can you feel it?
I can feel it.
I can feel it.
We're going to leave you with some hope. That's not us being head in the sand,
No, I feel it.
Yeah.
I feel it.
There's been a change in the air since Kamala, since Vice President Harris became, the nominee, and it's really exciting.
Tim Walz.
I don't know if she's technically the nominee yet because they haven't done the DNC. Anyway, we're not going to go down that fucking road. But I'm
here for it.
Yes, we're all here for it. Jen and Carolyn clearly support a Harris Walz ticket. And soon we're going to have some merch. We're going to merge our brand with the Harris Walz brand and come out with some cool cat lady merch.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
Neither of us have cats, though. We both hate cats.
I know.
That's not true. I don't hate cats.
I'm allergic to them.
I'm allergic to them, too. And they just don't like me.
Yeah. So
I'm a dog person.
Dog ladies for Kamala.
Yeah.
Anyway. So we're going to be coming at you. Our next episode is going to be on fetishes. How exciting is that, y'all? And now we can learn. We've learned things. Look at us, old people. We can learn. If you follow us on TikTok, twat JC, TWAT-JC. That's not twat as in what's in my pants.
Mind out the gutter.
Get your mind out of the gutter. That is the world according to Jen and Carolyn. And now if you go into our profile on TikTok, you can click on YouTube. You can find all of our episodes there. I don't think the audio quality is great. The conversion fucks it up. But
if I could ever figure out my Instagram password, we'll be able to link Instagram there. But I don't remember it.
But if you click on the YouTube link, that actually from there on YouTube, you can get to both our Apple and our Spotify links. So you can listen in the purest form. And we expect you to fucking do it. See you next week. Bye.